For the next several months, we Canadians are celebrating 150 years of Canadian Confederation, and you can't talk about the contribution of the Catholic Church to Canada over the past 150 years without looking at some of the major educational contributions given to us by the Congregation of St. Basil's, also known as the Basilian Fathers. The Basilian Fathers first came to Canada from France in 1850 at the invitation of Toronto's second bishop, Bishop Armand-François Marie de Charbonnel. As a Basilian student himself, Bishop de Charbonnel turned to his former teacher, Irish Basilian Father Patrick Maloney, to assist him in his work with the largely Irish Catholic community in Toronto. Eventually, the small congregation from France sent 4 of its members to the New World, and in 1852, St. Michael's College in Toronto opened its doors, offering a French style of schooling, a combination of high school and university education. Now, I should mention that the effort on behalf of the Basilian Fathers to come to Toronto was a large investment, a big risk, and a huge sacrifice, since the 4 Basilian Fathers who came represented a significant percentage of the total Basilian priests. And who better to shed some light on the history of the Basilian mission in Canada than my friend Father James Carruthers, who not only is a Basilian Father himself, but also the Director of Ongoing Formation for the congregation, a scholar, a teacher, and a gentleman. Father Jim, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us about
My pleasure.
You know, when we think about the Basilian Fathers and education, the fact that the Catholic education in Canada owes so much to the Basilian Fathers.
I think so.
And we can't talk about, Confederation without discussing their contributions.
Right.
But why did the Basilian Fathers come to Canada, in such a crazy time in Canadian history?
An invitation. The Bishop of Toronto in the mid-19th century was Armand de Charbonnel. Okay, He was bishop here. He needed, because of immigration, had a lot of Irish young kids coming, English-speaking kids, and he needed a school that he wanted, kind of minor seminary.
Yes.
He had studied with this Basilian community in Annonay, France. He was a student there.
Okay.
And he knew them, so he wrote them and said, "Would you come and help me?" And they sent over an Irishman, of all things, Patrick Maloney, who was teaching English to the French kids. And they sent him first, and then 3 Frenchmen came over, I think in 1852. And the 4 of them, the first school was in the basement of the bishop's residence down on Bond Street, or church, I think.
Yes.
Then, anyway, that's how it all started, and they began teaching at his request. Eventually, they ended up here on the campus on which we're walking now, Clover Hill, as it was known then. And what was very smart of the whole group, wherever they had a school, they built a parish. So
hence the St. Basil's
St.
parish.
Basil's was part of the whole school complex.
Right, okay.
And so there was the parish and school working hand in hand, and the superior, I believe the first one was Father Soulerin, a Frenchman. He was not only the pastor, but he was the superior and principal of the school. So there were that many of them working here. So that's why they came.
So you mentioned, Father Jim, that the Basilians would always put a parish close to the school that they would start up or be involved in. How many schools or educational centers were the Basilians involved with?
I counted up for you, and I got a good dozen at least, because when I joined the community in 1952, there were 2 higher education institutions, St. Michael's College,
right,
and then here, right beside us as we're walking along, the Pontifical Institute of Medieval Studies. But in the meantime, they got invited down to the Diocese of London and went to, in 1857, they went to Windsor and founded Assumption Church and Assumption College.
Assumption College, right.
Assumption College. So there were those 2. And when I joined in 1952, we had 6 high schools in Ontario. Ottawa, Sudbury, Sioux, 2 here in Toronto, 1 down at Assumption. And then they started going out west.
Okay.
And there were schools in Saskatoon, in Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is a lot, but in those days, there were lots of vocations. And the Basilian leadership were saying, we have all these vocations, we're getting all these invitations. Education's our gift, let's accept them. And so they did. So those were the great expansion years for us. Because in 1922 was a great moment for us because there was the separation between France and English-speaking Canada.
Yes.
Because, well, there were many reasons for it. But in 1922, we became the Basilian Fathers of Toronto rather than the Basilian Fathers of France.
Yeah. Okay.
And once that happened, the doors were wide open.
Wide open.
Yes. And you were asking me one of the questions about who are the leaders in all this. Well, in our expansion years, there were three for sure. Father Henry Carr was very strong. Father Edmund McCorkle, the next general after Carr. And then Father George Bernard Flaff, who later became Archbishop of Winnipeg.
Right.
But those three, those were the great expansion years. There were lots of priests and scholastics, and we were able to fulfill obligations in all these dioceses.
All those different places.
All those different places.
Wow.
And it was the great years when, in the mid-50s, when I was still a scholastic, we were about 800.
800?
800 members, yes.
Wow.
But then, of course, we're interested here in Canada, but there was the whole expansion in the U.S.
In the U.S. as well.
too.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's where we went. And also, what made the difference between being a French community and being a Canadian community? Well, every place we went to, we had to adapt to the laws of the land, the education of the land.
Whatever the provinces.
Yeah, right. And
regulations.
Father Henry Carr, Father McCorkle, they had to deal with governments all the time. So we adapted to what was needed. I remember in the 40s and 50s, we were all asked to go to the College of Education, get certified, be right up there, because we wanted our schools to be on a par with the public system.
Yes.
So we had to be well educated, well certified, so that we could do our job properly. And that was one of the that adaptability. That's also for me, one of our contributions to education. We were able to adapt to the society
that you were serving.
We were going to be teaching.
So with all of the schools, all of the Basilian teachers, how many? Just a rough estimate. How many students do you think since the beginning?
Thousands. I remember teaching. It was nothing for us. I taught French at St. Michael's High School for 12 years, and every year you had at least 200 students, every year, and you multiply that with all the other classes and all the other grades,
over the years,
and as long as they've been there since 1852.
So it could possibly be in the millions.
Oh, I don't know about millions, but I'll let you exaggerate. But it's a lot. We've had an influence, that's for sure. And when I was in general leadership, going around the country, I was never visited any city, any province where they didn't know Basilians. In Canada.
Yes.
And the States were lesser known because we're more widespread.
Yes.
But here in Canada, people knew us.
Yes.
And if they didn't know us for education, they knew it for hockey.
Sports was a really big thing.
Well, when you have all boys schools, you have to have sports.
Yes.
And they became quite good at it. Father Bauer, he did a lot.
Yes.
With the whole education through sports. He was a very intelligent man, and he made sure that all his players went to school, graduated.
Yes.
All of that. And but Carr, McCorkle, Flaff, they were the big ones. But then that's up until the 60s.
Okay.
In the 60s, the world changed.
The world changed, yes.
Right. We had a Vatican Council. We had whole psychological, sociological upheaval in the world in which we were living.
Yes.
There was Vietnam, which affected us here in Canada, whether
Yes.
we like to say it or not.
Yes, yes.
And all those things radically changed. Fewer vocations.
Okay.
So there was the beginning also too of beginning to find out it's very expensive to run private schools.
Yes.
Because one of our glories was be able to teach first generation of people coming to Canada.
Canada, yes.
That was one of my joys as
Migrants, immigrants.
At St. Michael's College School. I mean, all the first generation kids from Central Europe, from Italy, from Hispanic speaking countries. It was marvelous. It really was. And that continues because the spirit we left in those schools, I have visited them all. I was on the board of St. Michael's College School. That spirit is still there.
Still there.
Of who we are. It's expensive now to go to a private school, but Basilians have ensured that there is funding for kids unable to
pay the
big tuition.
big money, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm very proud of all that and what we have done in education. You asked me also about our legacy.
Yeah, so what would you say would be, so we look back at what the legacy of the Basilian Fathers were, in the past 150 years, but, going forward, the next 150, what would you say the legacy of the Basilian Fathers will be?
Well, you're working for one of our legacies, like Salt and Light. Father Tom Rosica, has taken our charism of evangelization through education. Our motto, teach me goodness, discipline, and knowledge.
Yes.
And when he was asked to start a radio and television community for Canada, English-speaking Canada, we were on a plane coming back from Rome. And he said, "You won't believe what they're asking me to do." I said, "Well, what?" He said, "They want me to start a television, Catholic television station." And I said, "Well," he said, "I don't know anything about that." And I remember telling him, "You didn't know anything about a World Youth Day either, but you did it. So you're perfect for this job." That's right. And look where you people are. And whenever I see Salt and Light, which is often, it's Tom's name, CSB, the Basilian charism. It's there.
Yes.
You just know it.
Yes.
And it's going to be carried on because we were always adaptable. Like technology is the main feature today. Well, our schools now, St. Mike's, the kids I see in 7, 8, and 9, most of their courses are on computer.
Yes.
Which I'm glad I don't have to be bothered with. I wouldn't know how to do it, but they're doing it because they have to adapt and keep up.
Yeah.
And education's very competitive. And you want your students to go on to college, university, and so we have kept up and very proud of that.
Yeah.
And of course, Salt and Light is a way we're going to go. And we're smaller now, and next year we are having a general chapter, 2018, and that's one of our big questions. Where are we going to go from here? What do we want to do with our charisms? What do we want to do with what we did in the past? How can we adapt?
How are we going to go forward?
And with the numbers that we have, what do we want to do with them? What will be best for them, for us, for the church? And that's a big factor that's very faithful, teaching of the church, social justice. Father Jerry McGuigan, Father Bob Holmes, involved in that charism that we have gone out and taught in new and wonderful ways.
So there's a lot to be had yet in the years to come.
That's
legacy is just beginning.
Well, the legacy hopefully will continue on. It'll be different. And it'll be smaller. But that's okay. One last thing to underline it. My best experience in the adaptability, I didn't mention him earlier, I'll mention him now. Father Eugene Carlisle LaBelle.
Okay.
He was the president and superior at Assumption University when it was the transfer from Assumption University to the University of Windsor.
Yes.
And he worked very hard with governments, thousands of meetings, thousands of negotiations to make that transfer, and he did it brilliantly. And the University of Windsor thrives. I go down there often, that's where I'm from, and walk around campus and can be very proud of what we have left. The tradition that there's a couple of small buildings, Assumption University, and they provide the chaplaincy for the University of Windsor, so our work will carry on in that way too.
Well, thank you so much, Father Jim. You know, Canada and the education here, Catholic education, Canada owes so much to the Basilians. And so, you know, we thank you. I thank you.
Well, I hope the Basilians that see us, because a lot of the people I live with watch Salt and Light. I hope they don't come to me after and say, oh, you forgot this, you forgot that. I hope they're satisfied at least with the amount that I was able to put in. And hopefully those who watch this will be happy to know that we have worked hard and happily as part of the community in our teaching gifts.
Well, thanks so much, Father Jim. Appreciate all your help.
Very good.
In the ensuing years after St. Michael's College first opened, the Basilian Fathers made huge sacrifices in manpower, money, and tirelessly continued their mission in Canada, helping to form millions of Canadian students since their first arrival in North America. And therefore, as we celebrate the 150 years of Canadian Confederation, it is only right that we take a moment to recognize the sacrifice, the dedication, the perseverance of the Basilian Fathers, without whom Catholic education in Canada wouldn't be what it is today. I'm Noel Ogle.